Hey, there you are.
Okay. I'm here. I'm back. Is everyone back?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what just happened.
So you've got a friend coming in next Thursday.
Yes. Thank you. So Aaron Kaufman is a buddy of mine. He has recruited he's the number 3 ranked of all time recruiting people to Keller Williams. And he built a class called the KW Effect. And he's traveled across the country for years teaching this at various market centers. Interestingly enough, the number 1 person and the number 2 person in that ranking are people that he recruited to Keller Williams. Okay, so he's number 3, and 2 of the many people that he has worked with and inspired are number 1 and number 2. Okay, so he is coming to Roswell from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock next Thursday, the 5th. It is my personal opinion you should clear your whole schedule for this. This is super important. Super important. Okay. He's going to talk about KW in a way that you've probably never heard anyone speak about KW before. I strongly suggest that you're there. Okay. All right. Let me just double check my calendar.
Quick question. Will it just be in person or will it be on Zoom? That's back to school open house that afternoon. So I can't get out of that. But
I'm going to be out of town too.
It will definitely be in person. I went to Alpharetta 2 weeks ago to do it, and they did happen to stream it on Facebook. But it is a class that we're paying for, so I know he's probably fairly reluctant to stream it. But maybe I'll push him a little bit since we're buddies. Okay. Let's talk about a couple of 6 personal perspectives today, okay? The first one I want to cover is the 80-20 principle, and the second one I want to cover is moving from E to P, okay? Who would like to tell me what the 80-20 principle is?
I'll talk. I'll tell you.
All right, go ahead.
80% of your business comes from 20% of your effort.
Okay, I love that. Hang on one. That's exactly right. It's basically an input versus output formula. So this is a concept, an economic concept that came from I believe it was the 17 or 1800s in Italy. And this guy, Pareto, was doing some research, and he found that 20% of the people of Italy owned 80% of the land, right? And therefore 80% of the people owned 20% of the land. He also found that 20% let's say it the other way, 80% of his peas were coming from 20% of his pea pods in his garden. Okay. And what you can see we've proven this in many times with basically every kind of concept and theory you could come up with. 80% of your inputs are going to create 20% of your outputs. And therefore 20% of your inputs are going to create 80% of your outputs. So this is really a discussion on, you guys can still hear me? It says yes?
You're going in and out again.
Yes.
All right, whenever it pops up, I'll slow down. You can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's put a real estate spin on it really fast, is throughout your day, 20% of your work activities are going to create 80% of the results. And we learned in bold what those 5 things are. Who wants to tell me what those 5, we called it the job description of the real estate agent. What are those?
lead generation, lead follow-up, negotiating, and script practice and role play. I can't remember the other one.
Who remembers it? You got 4 out of 5 so far.
She's saying negotiating contracts?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Going on appointments.
Yeah, there we go.
Yay, that's it.
Ding, ding, ding,
Good job.
Okay, so now we know what the 20% activities are. Okay, now I'm gonna help you understand one thing, which is every job role has an 80% and a 20%. So for example, if I was here, I can define my 20% that's going to that's going to translate to the 80% results. However, I still got 80% of the job that needs to get done, right? And so if I'm a one-man show, I have to do that stuff also. It's not saying that it doesn't need to get done. It certainly does need to get done. It just needs to, it's a lower level priority. And you might have to do that in your pajamas late at night, or in your pajamas early in the morning, or you may hire that out, right? That could be contract to close. That could be, you know, buying the closing gift, like that kind of stuff, right? So if you were to sit, if my assistant were to be sitting next to me, my 80% would be her 20%, right? And then she also has an 80%. And so we have to monitor that, because I want her focused on the things that are most critical to my success, all the projects and all that stuff. And I don't want her to get distracted by the stuff that's not on her, in her job description. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you were to take one guess on how do we make sure we respect and protect our 20%, what would you say the answer to that question, or that the answer to that problem is?
Time
Time
block.
blocks.
Okay, that's the first one. What else?
Calendar.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly right. Okay, so you guys ever heard the phrase that your calendar will convict you? Have you ever heard that?
Yep.
Okay, what does that mean to you, Trent?
That pretty much if someone wants to look at your calendar, they should know exactly where and when you were at all times
And?
and what you were doing.
Okay, and it should be your highest level priorities,
Okay, gotcha.
right? So it's kind of like if I were to, let's just say, for example, who wants to be my volunteer? Okay, Michael, let's say you came to me for some financial budgeting advice or something, right? I said, all right, bring me all your credit card statements, bring me your checking account ledger or whatever, and I saw what you spend money on. That would convict you, right? I would know where the problem is coming from, right? How much money do you spend on groceries? How much money do you spend on you know, Amazon or whatever? You know, what do you spend your money on, right? That would show me exactly what you're doing. Okay, this calendar represents the exact same idea. Okay, so if you know that your plan, for example, requires 2 appointments a week or 1 appointment a week, I should be able to look at your calendar and see an appointment block that says open appointment. And that should be at the most ideal time for you and your business and your family for you to go be on that appointment. Does that make sense? And when given the opportunity to suggest a time for an appointment, that's the one you suggest. That's very purposeful behavior. Make sense? So if we know that in order to hit your goals, you need to generate leads for 2 hours a day, my question to you is, which 2 hours are they going to be? Are you clear about it? And anyone that looks at your calendar clear about it? And more than likely, there will be numerous threats to that every day. And how good are you at protecting that time block? Because the degree to which you protect that time block will be the degree to which you hit your goals. Did I tell you guys the other day, I heard a phrase that said, the degree to which you follow your calendar will be the degree to which you achieve your goals. So if you got a perfect calendar, if you follow 70% of your calendar, you'll probably make 70% of the income that following your calendar properly would have created for you. Does that make sense? Okay. The corny line is, you know, if you erase, you must replace, right? So if you have, let's say, some type of event at your kid's school or something like that, and it's from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock some day, then you should have observed that at the beginning of the week during your planning time, right? So Sunday I huddle in my calendar, I say, oh, I got to go tend to something from 9 to 11 with my kid at school on Thursday. So when am I going to make up that 2 hours? Am I going to make it up on Thursday night? Am I going to make it up some other day? right? How am I going to get that done? Don't wake up Thursday and say, I can't lead generate today because I got to go to the kids' school. You already knew that. You should be planning. Does that make sense? For example, realtors are famous for basically calling it a year right around Thanksgiving time, right? Okay, so if you know you're not going to want to work during Thanksgiving, and you know you're not going to want to work when your family's in town for Christmas and New Year's and all that, then make sure you're not behind when those days come, right? Because you basically have two choices. If you're going to hang out with your family anyway, then you could hang out with your family knowing that you already hit your goals for the year and you'll behave in one way, or you can hang out with your family and feel that you're behind and you're going to miss your targets and you don't know how to identify the priorities because everything is scattered. Now, which one would you rather be? Make sense? Okay, so many of us are famous for to-do lists. Everyone like to-do lists? Donna, I know you love to-do lists, don't you? You're probably like me. You forgot that something was on your to-do list, you did it, and then you wrote it on your to-do list, and then you checked it off. You've probably done that, haven't you?
Yes, we like to accomplish things.
I literally do it every single day. That's how I work. Okay. So great. So the question is everything on your to-do list of equal importance? Okay, I agree. So do we evaluate our to-do list every day and identify the couple things that are critical that they get done? Or do you just go top to bottom regardless of it level of importance? What kind of intentionality do you have around reviewing that to-do list? Who wants to speak? Do you guys spend time reviewing all the details of your to-do list before you start to identify what the first one you're going to take action on is?
I do. I look at it every day and I star the things that like I have to do that day.
Okay, awesome.
Sometimes I even make a separate list of the order that I'm going to do those things that I have to do that day.
Yeah, that Gary Keller actually recommends that. He basically takes your to-do list. Let's say you have 15 items on your to-do list, and he says, what is the 20% of this list? Right? What are the 3 things on this list that have got to get done today no matter what? And then he puts those on a list that says, he calls that the success list. Right? And you could even bring in standards here. The standard, right, is that everything on the success list gets done. And you may even say something like it gets done by lunchtime, right? Now, particularly for you guys, because the majority of you are still in kind of, how do I want to say it? Like the business is in relative infancy, right? You got a lot of projects. There's a lot of projects that still need to get tended to, right? So I'm going to recommend that every single person on this call has a slot in their calendar, most likely every day, maybe every other day, that's project time. It's specifically time on your calendar to do things that are of slightly less importance, but still got to get done. And I'm going to encourage you to do project time at times where the public is not expecting to hear from you, right? So maybe you spend half an hour once the kids go to bed, or you wake up half an hour early to knock it out. I would not recommend that you do project time at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's work time, right? Okay, what are you guys hearing so far? Has anyone ripped up their current version of their calendar and plans to start over today?
What I hear you saying is we need to prioritize our 20%, make sure that we time block for it, and that we put it on our calendar, and that we that we schedule our project time outside of our work day, that we don't waste time during the day doing stuff that is not going to lead to generating business.
Exactly. Very well done. Thank you, Donna. Thank you. Anyone else want to share a thought or have any questions before we move on to the next one? Anyone? Okay, let's talk about the next concept. This is the third personal perspective. Okay, this is called moving from E to P. E is an elephant, P is in purposeful. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to kind of define both of those terms. Okay, I'll read you a little bit from the actual curriculum. Okay, it says, by committing to self-mastery, you know how to work with your strengths and weaknesses to master a task or a topic to achieve your goals. Using the 80-20 principle, you have now pinpointed your one thing and harnessed the tools you'll need to help you time block. Now get purposeful and move from E to P to excel at those activities. You can attain a certain level of success utilizing your natural abilities, but expect to hit a ceiling at some point. Okay, E is your natural abilities, right? It's kind of, you're quote, doing the best you can without a purposeful system. So we're about to get into that. Wouldn't you like to achieve even greater success and break through that ceiling? How about living a larger life or attaining your one thing? Okay, so E to P is really about breaking through that ceiling of achievement. Okay, it's kind of like if you go to the gym and you're kind of, you got a habit of it, and you've adjusted your eating habits a little bit, but you still kind of hit that ceiling, right? If you want to break through the ceiling, you probably need some help. Like you might hire a coach, or you might hire, a fitness instructor or something like that, right? Or a diet coach. So when you go from E to P, what you're doing is you're getting purposeful about taking your project, your business to the next level. So how do you become purposeful about something? What are the first things you should look for? There's 5 steps to getting purposeful. We learned about this a little bit in bold, so I'll help you guys out. The first is focus. We got to write down your goals and we got to focus on the 20%. Okay. Next, we're going to find strategic options. Okay. We're going to ask, how can this get done? Right? Are there any different ways or better ways to do this? Right? So what we're doing is we're searching for evidence of success. Right? We're looking to see how there are other people most likely that are getting this done at a high level. What are they doing? Right? The next thing is you're going to find models to follow. Right? You're going to attend trainings that teaches you how to get to where you want to go. You're going to identify mentors or people who have done it. Right? Maybe part of your plan, just as a sidebar, is taking somebody out for lunch or coffee or something once a month who is where you want to be, right? Or who is where you want to be in a certain space. So for example, maybe you take out somebody who has done some real estate investing. Maybe you want to do some real estate investing and you learn their stories and you learn their strategies and you learn their mistakes and you learn their models, right? Maybe if you want to learn more about, I don't know, travel, then you take somebody out that's been places you want to go and you find out how they put it all together, right? It's getting intentional and purposeful about finding mentors that have achieved things that you're on target to achieve. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install systems. Like Donna suggested, we're going to time block. Okay, we're going to create checklists. We're going to test the systems to make sure they work. Right? It's okay. We're going to fail, guys. You just got to fail fast and fail forward. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in accountability. Okay, so bringing accountability in would be keep track of it with your 411, or for our purposes, oftentimes reporting your numbers, right? Every month, or I'm sorry, every week, we're saying, hey, this is how many contacts I had. This is how many appointments I booked or went on. This is how many pendings I had. What we're trying to do, by the way, I'm sure I've said this, but what we're trying to do is find the relationship between contacts and appointments held. And we're also trying to confirm the conversion ratios between appointments held and pendings or listings taken. Because once we confirm those two, then you know exactly what activities you got to do. The next thing to do is try to figure out how much time that's going to take. The more accurate we get at that, the more succinct your calendar will be. Because you might find in order to hit your goals, 2 hours of lead gen isn't going to do it. You might need 3. You might need 5, right? You also might find that you've chosen a lead generation strategy which takes less time and you can get all your contacts in an hour and 15 minutes because you got a dialer or something. Great. Look how much time you just saved yourself. Make sense? That's why the numbers are critical, guys, is because at the end of the day, it's going to change your calendar. The better your calendar is, the better your success is going to be. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. Who can think of an example? Maybe somebody that went to Bold can throw out an example of this. Can you think of a time that you moved from E to P in some type of skill or activity or initiative? Let's try to bring a real life example in.
For me, it was making tons of calls. Was trying to hit that 100 number. That was for me revolutionary.
Okay, I want to go in a few different directions with that. So prior to you hearing whatever you heard that kind of put that on the radar for you and you adopted that mentality that was something you were aiming for, what was your approach to calling? And how did your approach change after you had this realization?
Well, I think before Bold, I was not as bold. I was a little fearful, I guess. Of what I'm not exactly sure, but just there was some reluctance to making calls. But through the Bold process, through being on a team with Donna and that was that changed me. I just did it, and that really, for me, created some real results.
Donna, you hear that? You changed this man's life.
Yeah, and he helped me too. I'm much more confident since role playing with Michael.
There you go. There you go. So when you sit, like the distractions that presented themselves prior to Bold, I'm sure are still in place. So how did you, from a mindset perspective, how did you kind of ward those off? How were you more successful after Bold? What was going on in your head? And maybe what suggestions do you have for others that might be on the call to tackle those problems?
Well, I think for me the accountability of teammates, other people, was the strongest motivator for me. I didn't want to let anybody down, and that was really really powerful for me.
Donna, do you want to add to that?
For me, I think for many of the people in our little Bold group, we kind of focused on 1%, doing 1% more, being 1% better every day. And that was kind of just, it didn't seem overwhelming when you broke it down to such a small chunk, but it makes a big difference if you're striving every day to do 1% more, be 1% better. Doesn't sound as scary.
Okay, I love that. So what's an example of being 1%? How are you planning on being 1% better today, Donna?
Well, for me, I started this morning. I actually finally updated my pipeline so that was a big deal for me. It's something that I had planned on doing, and now I have a system. And I think it's just being more intentional about my lead generation. I'm still struggling there. I don't respect my calendar like I should. So I'm going to be more intentional about my calendar today.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. And probably from this point forward, right? I love that. Who else wants to, and by the way, going from E to P could be as simple as creating a checklist on something, right? If you want to be purposeful about how the buyer experiences the contract to close process, and you want to be purposeful around making sure that things are systematized and nothing slips through the cracks and all the deadlines are met and all that stuff, going from, you know, oh, I forgot I needed to get the utilities page, or oh my gosh, I forgot to take a picture at closing with the buyer, or oh my gosh, I forgot to call them after the amendment was signed and let them know, or whatever. Left to, you know, if you don't have a process, if you don't have a checklist or a system, something's going to slip through the cracks and you're going to give poor service or less than ideal service at some point in the transaction, if not multiple points in the transaction. So establishing a system and a checklist is a purposeful way of making sure that you give a uniform experience. I mean, how many other, you guys are going to all go into probably 5 organizations today, and their goal is to give a uniform experience, right? You walk into Chick-fil-A, hey, whatever they say, right? They always say thank you. You walk into Moe's, hey, welcome to Moe's. That's their standard, right? They're trying to create a universal experience.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Something that I heard recently is you want to make sure that you're basically providing the same service for every client, for fair housing reasons too. You don't want to show preference to one client and not show the same type of preference to a different client, because it could actually appear to be some kind of a fair housing violation. So if you have a checklist and you're following the same steps for each client, then you're kind of demonstrating that you treat everybody equally, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, and that's an angle I wasn't planning to bring up, but that's super important. Now, the first thing that popped into my mind was dealing with our friends or dealing with our family members, right? A lot of times we just throw them in the car and think everything's going to work out perfectly. Pam, does that always happen that way? Candace, does that work proper? Has that worked perfectly over the last 20 years for you?
No,
I
no.
didn't think so. Pam, what were you going to say?
I said, heck no.
Right. If anything, your friends and family need a more thorough buyer orientation or buyer consultation or listing consultation, right?
Definitely.
Because they are going to test your systems. They're going to test your willingness to protect your commission. They're going to test your willingness to go show the home 4 times to 4 different family members. You see what I'm saying? And they'll do it
Hey,
all
Phil,
in the
can I add
name
to
of
that?
being your friend. Markia, what's that? Did you say something, Markia? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can now, yeah. Now I can't. Try again.
Can't hear me?
I can now.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah, go.
Okay. No, I said on Sunday, I actually showed, I have a buyer broker agreement with someone I went to college with. I don't know her husband, and I had 5 showings, and every showing I scheduled in between Kennesaw and Ackworth, we got there right on time to every appointment. And I was impressed myself just because I was kind of like freaking out, just making sure that I timed it perfectly. And they made a comment. It was just like, we're very impressed with the professionalism and timeliness of all of the showing. And I was, I was tooting my own horn, but for them to recognize it as well too was pretty impressive.
Yeah, sometimes it's that we don't often get that. That's awesome. Good job on that. I think that they're going to test our abilities to stay professional, right? It might be a little harder to share bad news with them, right? So the question of, hey, during this process, there's likely going to be a couple little obstacles that are challenges that need to be addressed. And periodically, I might have to deliver news to you that you don't want to hear. So how would you like me to deliver the bad news, should that arise? Do you think that the answer to that question will coach you and instruct you on how to move forward with that client? If you don't ask that question, or if you don't find that out from any client, but certainly people you know, it's going to be a lot more tense when that moment happens, right? It's really important to ask the question, hey, I want this to be a 10+ experience for you. What's the most important thing that has to happen in this transaction for you to feel that way, right? Just so I know, we've not really interacted in a professional setting before. So what are the most important things that need to happen in this transaction for you to feel great, right? How do I win with you? How do I lose with you, right? How would you best like to be communicated with? Do you have any concerns that you want to bring up now that I can, kind of mitigate your anxiety around this, right? Hey, by the way, the average buyer looks at 6 to 8 homes with me before they buy, before they choose one. How do you feel about that? They're generally going to go in one or two directions. They're going to say, yes, of course, I don't want to go and waste any time looking at properties that aren't a match for me. That sounds perfect. That's a good buyer. Or they're going to say, well, I was thinking about 6 to 8 homes on Monday, and 6 to 8 more homes on Tuesday, and 6 to 8 more homes on Wednesday. And by the way, don't expect to eat dinner with your family for the next 3 months. And, that'll be cool, right? And you're like, no, that's not the way we work, right? I'm going to take you, you're going to tell me what you want. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to feel like I'm going to ask for your birth weight soon, but I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Then I'm going to take you right to it. And that's the home you should buy. Because I know the market well. I'm the economist of choice. I follow it every day. And I've asked you enough questions. I was once told by a bold teacher, and at the time I blew it off. I'm like, no way, no way. And he was right. He said, if you show your buyer more than 5 properties, one of 2 things is happening. It's a little different with 50 offers on properties now, but for a different reason. But if you show your buyer more than 5 properties, one of 2 things is happening. Either you haven't asked them enough questions, so meaning it's on you, or you don't know the market well enough, which is also on you. Meaning you're not taking enough control over the experience. You're not being purposeful about the questions you ask. You're not being purposeful about how you share your time, right? You're not being purposeful about setting proper expectations. You're basically just winging it. You're basically doing what you think should be done when you think it should be done, but there's no order to it. And God forbid you get what do you call it? A tester or whatever you call it, of somebody that you deliver one level of experience or one level of service to one group of people, and then you deliver a different level of service and say different stuff to, let's say, a minority. Oh my gosh, you might lose your license through no fault of your own. Well, let me rephrase that. No intentional thought of your own. I mean, does anyone want to lose their license? Me either. Right? So systems are actually both offensive and defensive. Purposeful behaviors and systems accomplish both. Okay, somebody give me an aha and then we'll close out for the day. Pam, you've been pretty quiet. Anything you want to add to this? I know we've been building systems together for 10 years probably.
No, I can't think of anything right off the bat.
You want to just share your thought on, I mean, none of us were always purposeful about how we run our business, but can you just share how the purposeful behavior that you've been executing on over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years has changed your world, has changed your business?
Well, I think one big thing I've done is I don't know if anybody in here is aware, in Google email, you can set up something called templates. And in templates, you can, have it basically, you can bring up an email that you send out frequently. So I have the same emails I send out, like right after we go under contract, talking about, that I go over again, what the due diligence period is, what has to happen by the end of it, and, some recommendations of inspectors. And, I do the same thing at, at various phases in the, in the process,
Right.
whether it's, for listings or buyers. And so that helps because, you are saying the same thing to people, to everyone.
That's a great point. Is the template the same as canned response on Gmail?
No, I don't think so. Templates just allows you, to use, when you send out similar emails, it allows you to fill it in, to fill that in as your email. And then of course I go in and tweak it for each person because of course, their dates have to, when due diligence ends for them and that sort of thing has to be the same, has to change.
So I use something called canned responses. I'm gonna have to look into what the difference between templates and canned responses are. But I love that. Like I used to send about essentially the same email to a lot of recruits. And we would have, Luth and I would put X's on the things that would change. So it'd be like,
Right.
hi XXX. And then she would fill in the person's name. I enjoyed speaking to you this XXX, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever, right? I mean, it got that specific. And I'd write her a note and says, hey, Joe, line 5284, we spoke in the morning, send the email. Boom, she knew exactly what that meant. It got out. And it's the same message to everybody. Make sense?
Yeah. So I don't know what the difference is in canned response. It sounds very similar. I guess I wasn't familiar with canned responses, but
all right, we'll have to trade information later on then.
Templates. Okay.
All right, guys, was this helpful? Okay, just like Aubrey says during the team meetings, right? Take one thing from these sessions, and whether it's an idea or a system or a model or a quote or whatever, and let's make sure that we didn't just hear this stuff today, that we actually determine what is the most critical thing, the one thing that we're going to adopt in our business today, because at the end of the day, we got to be 1% better, right? All right, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.